Hi, it's Geoff Chalmers here from discoverdoublebase.com. We are joined by the fantastic Joseph Conyers, who's a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra and an all-round good guy. So, Joe, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, thanks.
We've been filming a series of lessons with you about orchestral technique, and we've been asking for some questions, and one of them that's come up is, why might a student receive advice from one teacher in one orchestra about articulations in orchestral excerpts that's different from a teacher in another orchestra? So perhaps the Chicago Symphony on one hand and the Philadelphia Orchestra on the other hand. Why might the advice that the student receives differ?
Well, Jeff, that's actually a really, really good question. Because what a lot of young bass players may not realize is that the traditions of bass playing have actually been built on the halls these orchestras played in. And that has dictated a lot of the way these sections approach sound, the way they approach the amount of sound that they make, and the way, particularly, the articulations that they have. I think one of the biggest extremes in the United States is like Boston Symphony versus the Philadelphia Orchestra. Two fine orchestras, two very different styles of bass playing. Not to say that one is better than the other, they're just definitely different. Now, the fundamentals are the same, intonation, rhythm, but like the way, the length of notes change, and this is why. Boston Symphony Hall is probably one of the great halls of the world. I've never played there with an orchestra. I have played an audition there, but I've never played there as an orchestra, but I have heard a performance in there, and it's a very resonant, rich hall. The basses can come off, unless they are very articulate, as swimmy. Because there's so much, what we call, the room is very wet, or there's a lot of acoustic.
Yeah.
So when it's very swimmy, the basses have to work very hard to be very articulate, very clean, and not necessarily very long. And that's something that's been developed with the history of the orchestra and their time in Boston Symphony Hall. Whereas in Philadelphia, for 100 years, the Philadelphia Orchestra played in probably one of the, what we would call acoustically driest halls on the planet,
right.
The Academy of Music. There was no reverberation whatsoever.
Yeah.
You'd get more from your bedroom probably than you would in the Academy of Music. And because of that, the bass players played quite long, quite big to help fill up this room, and the articulations didn't necessarily have to be as pointed or as short. So this is now we're getting a little into detail, but it's the front of the note would be the same, but the length after that attack would be much bigger. So if you take lessons from people from different orchestras, know that when you get advice, it's likely coming from a tradition of playing from that player. So then, Jeff, then the question is, what do I do? What do I do? There are a few things. Again, nothing ever hides a fantastic bass player or musician. That will always shine at an audition, regardless of the articulations. That, coupled with the fact that the audition candidate must be flexible. They must be, it would be up to the committee to ask, could you play this shorter? Could you work on the articulations? Because when you get to a final of an audition, the committee might ask that of you just for that fact, to see how flexible you are and if you can fit the tradition of that orchestra. Once you check all those boxes and you understand your own musicianship and are comfortable in your own skin, you can be successful in any orchestra. But it is really, really important to know that these traditions do exist, and that's why you might hear contradicting information.
It's a fascinating conversation. We've been kind of riffing around this subject, throughout the week that we've spent together filming these lessons, and it's kind of come up in different ways, and it's really interesting the way that these different elements interact. Do you think there's any, one of the things that was on my mind as you were discussing this, do you think it has any effect on how ahead on the, or where the bass section, how ahead they might be playing on the beat? I mean, in terms of rhythm, do you think
Sure.
if you're in a really live room, perhaps you need to be more direct, or maybe sit back on it if the room is really dry? I don't know. I mean, is there anything there?
Now this is turned slightly into an acoustics course.
Yeah.
Because literally the hall size would play a big role in that. The size of the stage plays a big role in that. Because sometimes if the stage is very big, what the basses hear versus what the back of the violins hear is very, very different. And it might feel that you're not with the conductor or with the sound,
yeah,
or even with the conductor,
yeah,
to be honest. But the conductor will say, you're late or you're early, and then you'll use that as your guide. Yeah. But that it does affect how the halls definitely affect how an orchestra responds to their conductor, and then how they respond to each other. Yeah. But that's based on, I mean, yeah, so many different things. Particularly stage size. I think that's a big one, and the size of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Joe, thanks so much for discussing that and sharing it with the audience. I'm sure everybody really appreciates you providing a little bit of insight. So, yeah, that's wonderful. If you want to learn more from Joe, please check out his courses. He's also got a really buzzing Instagram account where there's lots of orchestral excerpts being played that I know that will inspire you with your playing. So thanks for joining me, Joe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.